Why is it that 80s cartoons always seem to get live-action movie adaptations 20 to 30 years after they premiere? Don't answer that question. The answer is usually nostalgia, money, and in cases where the movie turns out alright, a good script and translation into a 90-minute to 2-hour story. However, that last reason unfortunately turns out to be a lesser seen occurrence. So why don't we look at the live-action movie adaptations of 80s cartoons that failed to capture the charm of the original, even if the original cartoon wasn't that great to begin with. This will include any movies that primarily were in live action based on cartoons that had their main run in the 1980s. Keep in mind, some of these cartoons may have originally been based off other forms of media or have some form of non-movie adaptations as well. However, what all of these movies have in common, besides not being the greatest, is that there's an animated counterpart to each one that was made in the 1980s. So let's take a look at the top 10 worst live-action movies based off 80s animated series, in my opinion. Number 10. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, or as the movie is just called, Masters of the Universe. Everyone is on equal grounds here. He-Man doesn't get top billing. I don't really dislike this movie. It's not a fan favorite, but it has a pretty good concept. I won't be going into a full review for each choice on this list, but I'll go into key notes. This movie involved He-Man and company being sent from their land of Eternia to the Earth we know, along with some of Skeletor's main henchmen. That actually sounds like a pretty good plot. It may annoy fans who wanted to see an all-out war in Eternia with something from the cartoon, but it still uses the characters with some wacky shenanigans of them trying to figure out how our world is different from theirs. Until you find out the part of the movie where they want to focus on some teenagers that discover our heroes, so then we need a backstory for the teenagers. While the plot of the teenagers falls a bit flat, I like the interactions that He-Man and the cast have with the city. It's the standard fantasy heroes and modern day stuff you'd expect, like them scavenging for food in fast food chicken buckets and other fun, as I said, wacky shenanigans. It's sort of like the Thor movie when he's in New Mexico for part of that movie. This movie still falls flat in some areas, but considering how cheesy the original show was, the writers did do a decent job. Plus, in the He-Man She-Ra Christmas special, Orko is transported to the real world, meets some kids, and then learns the meaning of Christmas from them. So the concepts in the movie do not deviate too far from what we've seen in the show. A final note. Skeletor is actually pretty threatening in this movie. It makes you wonder what would happen if he actually was competent in the series, and if his face was made of plastic. Number 9. G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra. I was never a major fan of the G.I. Joe franchise, so disclaimer on that. As with He-Man and other 80s classics like Transformers, this started out as a toy line and added personality and cheesiness with the cartoons, especially with Cobra Commander and his constant yelling. However, this movie, well, I'm pretty neutral on it. I'm not saying it's that bad of a movie. It looks nice and has some fun over-the-top action scenes, but it falls in the middle of good and bad for me, which is why it's only number 9. Something that did get confusing was Joseph Gordon-Levitt played Cobra Commander, but his character took the title of Cobra Commander later in the movie, so before that he was just known as the Doctor. Yet his second-in-command, who turned into Destro later in the movie, was played by Christopher Eccleston, who some may know as playing the Doctor in a completely different reality. I'm not even a Doctor Who fan, and this got confusing for me, so imagine how it got for other people who are really fans of the series. Number 8. Transformers 2: Revenge of the Fallen. The Transformers movies. Of all the movies I'll be discussing, this is probably the most mainstream franchise, so who hasn't spoken about it? Well, lots of people probably. The first one did its job of bringing the Transformers to life, even though it felt more like Transformers Armada since humans were involved in the plot. If that was the only film, it probably would be remembered as a fun popcorn movie that was thin on good plot. Once the second film rolled around, though, the honeymoon was over and audiences who liked the first film may have been turned off by the second movie since it was pretty similar with some lackluster dialogue. Oh, and spoiler alert, Optimus Prime dies, and then is later revived. Huh, that's innovative, killing off Optimus Prime. If only some other movie thought of that before. And I don't know, maybe if it also included the death of other robots to make room for new ones. I don't know, and had a cheesy 80s theme, and maybe a main villain voiced by Orson Welles, but there's no record of those very specific things ever happening in the Transformers movie, so that's just my dream. Overall, Transformers 2 isn't the worst of the series, but it showed that Hollywood could keep devoting a large budget to these movies and pump them out every so often, and people would still go and see them. It's not that you can't enjoy them, it's just that they get subjectively less innovative with each new entry. Number 7. Alvin and the Chipmunks. Alvin and the Chipmunks was a pretty solid kids show. I mean, the franchise did start in the late 1950s with novelty records, but a full series was dedicated to these guys in the 1980s, and there were really no issues with it. You had what you could expect from a show about 3 chipmunk brothers that act like normal kids and are also pop stars. Not sure what to expect exactly. It had no real direction outside of a plot that gave the Chipmunks a chance to sing a song related to what's going on, with some backstory episodes on occasion. The movie kind of followed that formula the right way. I was clearly outside the demographic they were aiming towards, since they were likely targeting kids that were probably my age when I watched the cartoon. The movie to an extent follows how the Chipmunk story goes, but since the cartoon series just decided on plots that fit whatever the writers felt like writing, the movie had to take one short episode and extend it to an entire movie. It may not be the best written movie, but when you think about it, the Chipmunks are most entertaining during 11-minute shorts, historically speaking. That's not entirely true, since there were 2 movies where Alvin and the Chipmunks meet Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman, and those were pretty entertaining from recollection. The live-action movie did have some sequels, which followed the same formula with the Chipettes and a continuously diminishing approval rating from reviewers. It never bothered me that they had modern versions of songs in the Chipmunks movies, since the Chipmunks have always performed songs that were modern to the time period they lived in. While it did seem like they were trying to appeal to kids based on how adults perceive kids' music in this movie, the Chipmunks have always been about pop music. I mean, if you look at the Chipmunks theme song from the 1983 series, it sounds pretty similar to the song "Love's Been a Little Bit Hard on Me" by Juice Newton, which came out a year before in 1982. So if they decide to just make their own original theme for the 2007 live-action movie, it might sound eerily similar to Every Time We Touch by Cascada. Actually, that might be kind of cool. I might have dug that a little too much. Number 6. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3: Turtles in Time. This movie had the unfortunate task of having to follow up not only a great live-action interpretation of a cartoon based off a comic book, but also a sequel that lost some steam from the first movie, showing that these live-action movies may just be surviving based off the popularity of the franchise and reputation of the first live-action movie, so this movie had something to prove. Not only was this movie subject to a weaker plot, but it changed to a different animatronics company that wasn't related to Jim Henson, so this new company had some big shoes to fill when bringing the Turtles to live action. Unfortunately, the third movie lost the edge that the first and even second one could provide, making the plot more simplistic, yet also more confusing by adding time travel to the mix and a villain that was never before seen in the movies, TV show, or comic books. I understand and support not using the Shredder in this movie as the main villain again, but the Turtles have so many villains in the cartoon and comics that they could have used instead. There was no need to make a new character when the series has a rich amount of villains that were not utilized in live action before. But what made this movie look even worse is that it basically represented the decline of the popularity of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and stopped all live-action movies involving the Turtles until the live-action Michael Bay movie in 2014. No matter what you think of the Michael Bay version, at least it didn't halt big-budget interpretations of the series for 20 years. Yet, the sequel could always do that. Or the third movie. Or the fourth movie. Number 5. Inspector Gadget. This movie completely changed Inspector Gadget's personality from an absent-minded cop who could do his job correctly when he managed to think things through, which he rarely did, meaning his niece and dog had to help him out 98% of the time, to the movie version that had him as someone who tried his best at his job and put his heart into it, but was just not cut out to be a cop. He was basically a character that we were supposed to sympathize with, since he was trying to impress a woman and he was in a horrible accident which caused him to get the surgery to become Inspector Gadget. They tried to humanize Inspector Gadget more, which would have been fine if the goofiness of Inspector Gadget's, gadgets were not so prominent in the film. The movie also removed most of his niece and dog's role, Penny and Brain respectively, and the intimidating mystique of Dr. Claw was also gone. They revealed his face from the beginning and they made his personality more goofy. He was like an evil Inspector Gadget. There were also some more minor differences from the movie and series that would have been fine if the larger plot points weren't changed for the worst. Because they were changed, it kind of just emphasized the other problems of the movie. There was a direct-to-DVD sequel to this movie that you would think would just turn out like every other sequel to a bad movie that goes straight to home video and just decline in quality even more, but this movie is probably what the first live-action one should have been. The sequel acts like the first movie never even existed, ignoring most of the changes made from the original series in the first movie. They changed every actor except for the voice actor of the Gadgetmobile, and basically just labeled it as a sequel to get the attention of any kids that liked the first movie. French Stewart played a very Don Adams-esque Inspector Gadget. Dr. Claw's face was kept in the shadows and he even said his famous line, and it felt cheesy and over the top like the show, rather than just being cheesy because it was trying too hard to be sentimental like the first movie. Looking at the whole plot of the sequel, it isn't the greatest, but it's pretty true to the source material, which is what I like to see. It's very surprising a direct-to-DVD sequel could actually surpass the original like this. Well, maybe not considering the original. Maybe it was the change in director that did this. Who directed this? Alex Zamm? He's probably some underrated director somewhere. What else did he do? Alright, that wasn't too bad. Anything more recent? Oh, well, maybe that was just a misstep. Anything else? Oh, well, is there, no, oh, alright, maybe I positively judged too early, but then again, I haven't seen any of these other movies, so maybe I'm judging a book by its cover. Huh? Number 4. Garfield. Garfield may have been established as a newspaper comic strip in 1978, but many kids first saw the character come to life in the 1980s animated series, Garfield and Friends. Usually, 2 of the 3 segments of this cartoon involved the antics of Garfield, John, Odie, and others, and the 3rd segment involved the lesser appreciated and Friends, who Garfield barely interacted with, so the title Garfield and Friends may have been a little too generous. It probably should have been something like Garfield and these farm animals that you and Garfield have never seen before but seem like swell fellows. This movie is not so bad that it's good or so bad that it's insulting to the source material. It's just sort of boring. There's nothing I find absolutely wretched or laughably bad about it, it just exists. Here, maybe if we go over some pros and cons. Pros. Bill Murray voiced Garfield. That Black Eyed Peas song was kinda catchy. Okay, cons. I don't feel like listing them. The characters were just dull and needed more exaggerated personalities in this case to give Garfield someone to bounce reactions and conversations off of. Odie wasn't goofy enough, he was just a normal dog. John was just a normal guy. I'd like him as maybe my friend since he's quiet and respectable, but he's supposed to entertain me in this case. I wouldn't choose him for that. And any other character from the comic or cartoon was basically like John and Odie, where they don't really have their true personality and their movie personality was not entertaining enough to make up for these changes. Number 3. The Smurfs. If Masters of the Universe was like Thor, this movie is like Disney's Enchanted. The writers put the Smurfs and their enemy Gargamel into the real world, having them interact with New York City and Neil Patrick Harris's Ordinary Man character. Normally I don't care about product placement in movies, but these products were not placed. They literally took a break from the movie to play Guitar Hero and show it off. It was not subtle at all, it was just kind of boring and felt like they were padding the movie. It actually felt like they were trying to shove it in my face rather than poorly trying to hide it, which made it worse. I was never much of a fan of the Smurfs franchise, but I felt the actual Smurf stuff in the movie could have been handled more closely to either the show or comics. Number 2. Dragon Ball Evolution. Although many outside of Japan associate the Dragon Ball franchise with the 90s, remember, the original Dragon Ball series ran in Japan from 1986 to 1989, so this is indeed an animated series from the 1980s. I love the Dragon Ball franchise. In fact, some of the plot lines and fights in the original Dragon Ball surpass those in Dragon Ball Z in my opinion, so I did like the prospect of Dragon Ball getting the attention over DBZ for a first movie. However, when you saw the promotional images for the movie, you knew what to expect. This movie basically killed all prospects for bringing live-action Dragon Ball or DBZ to theaters. Then again, we really don't need it. If this movie has anything going for it, it's probably that it falls into the so bad it's funny category. Instead of making a movie based off of a franchise that was insanely popular in the 90s and 2000s, and really still did have die-hard fans then and even more now, the writers apparently felt like they needed to change everything that made that series great. Who needs a series about going on adventures to find magical artifacts that grant any wish, while meeting various enemies that sometimes knew martial arts with ki-based attacks and an always confident and fun-loving protagonist? Today's youth doesn't want any of that. Like, none of the movie was like the anime outside of the base elements. Actually, a good amount of the base elements were wrong too. I feel like this movie almost had it right about 10 different times for certain parts. I could probably make a top 10 list where I find 10 points in the movie where I give it too much credit, but no! This movie exists to tell us how Hollywood thought an action-adventure movie should be, rather than how a Dragon Ball movie should be. Like, here, what are some of the plot points they changed? Like, why can't Goku be confident in his abilities? Why is he being educated in school? Is this Gohan in the Buu Saga or Kid Goku? Isn't Mai supposed to be with Emperor Pilaf and not with King Piccolo, and not have supernatural powers? Why is Goku bothered by bullies? Why do fools fall in love? It all doesn't matter. It's time for number 1. While number 2 had some funny moments from how unfitting the movie was for the franchise, number 1 took itself too seriously, deviated from the source material too much, and the changes that were made did not make the movie any more enjoyable than it probably could have been. Number 1. Gem in the Holograms. The Gem in the Holograms movie seemed to want to root itself in 100% serious reality for the plot, as opposed to the over-the-top cheesy soap opera plot of Gem in the Holograms the series that also utilized science fiction to an extent. This movie iteration sucked all of the fun out of Gem and the Holograms without replacing it with what would have made good drama if that's what they were really going for. Instead of picking apart the plot of the movie, let's go over the main plots of both the show and the movie. In the show, the main character Jerrica Benton is in her 20s and inherits shares of her father's music studio Starlight Productions. However, the corrupt Eric Raymond ultimately has control of the company and hires his own band of modern girls, the Misfits, who enter the office on motorcycles shaped like guitars. Jerrica, her sister Kimber, and her 2 other friends who are musicians, Aja and Shayna, discover Jerrica and Kimber's father left them behind a supercomputer named Synergy. This supercomputer has complete sentience and can project holograms over anything or of anything that will completely fool anyone unaware, along with project a human version of the computer itself. Jerrica can communicate with Synergy at any time using her star earrings linked to Synergy, allowing her to create holograms from any location. With this power, Jerrica creates a band with her friends under the disguise of Gem, and everyone, including her purple-haired boyfriend Rio, natural hair color, has no idea that these holograms are so great. Jerrica wins back her father's music studio, and then the rest of the series follows Jerrica as Gem and her band, touring the world, trying to foil the Misfits and Eric Raymond, who are constantly trying to upstage them. Now let's see how the movie plot compares. Jerrica Benton is a teenager who lives with her aunt. She had a video that went viral on YouTube and attracted the interest of Starlight Productions, not owned by her deceased father, but rather Erica Raymond, who wants to sign Jerrica to a music deal with her bandmates who don't do that much in the movie. They also discover a small robot named Synergy created by her father, and it can project home movies, which are kind of like holograms. The earrings work as a power source and do not help out Jerrica at all. And this entire time when she performs, she's been using the disguise of Gem and must keep using it to keep her record label. That means Synergy using sophisticated holograms that Jericho is using to create Gem, on her own will of course, is replaced by face paint. Also, Rio is Erica's son, since it creates more conflict when Jericho and Rio fall in love. Oh, and the Misfits? Yeah, they are not in the main plot. There is a mid-credit sequence, which is actually kind of awesome and makes me want a sequel, since it almost seems like the setup that they teased there should have been the main plot, but I won't spoil that. Overall, nothing about the Gem movie felt like Gem and the Holograms, whether you're looking at the cartoon or even the comics. I feel like the writers and directors wanted to make their own movie about a singer who goes viral, independent of any series. I think everybody involved is talented, but they needed their own movie to work with. Sure, it wouldn't have gotten the attention without the name Gem attached to it, but they would have been able to focus more on their tween demographic they were looking at. Every other movie on this list adapted the source material to a movie, and then changed elements to make it fit a movie plot or make it more modern. However, the movies built upon the original series despite the problems, telling the story of the source materials from the writers' and directors' perspective, leading to problems after changing so much from the original series. The Gem movie took a plot in a similar genre as Gem and the Holograms, and then dressed it up with references to the Gem series, like the whole Synergy plot. So it really felt like it wasn't an attempt to tell the story based off Gem. Also, there was no iconic antagonist in the rival band, the Misfits. That is the key Gem rival. I speculate the Misfits were being saved for a sequel and the director didn't want to use that plot right away, but you have to earn your sequel. If you don't have a good first movie, sometimes you don't get a second chance. Even Dragon Ball Evolution used King Piccolo right away, despite the fact they hinted at a sequel they never got. They didn't go to a lesser-known villain in the Red Ribbon Army to save King Piccolo for a future movie. Masters of the Universe used Skeletor right away, and the Ninja Turtles movies started off with the Shredder before going to their own unpopular villains, but still, they earned their chance to use that villain that people didn't like by putting the Shredder in first. Maybe the Misfits would have made the plot feel more crowded, but it seems like a missed opportunity to me. In the end, the movie could not appeal to old and newcomers. You know, this movie might not even be the worst movie on this list strictly from a structure standpoint. It just deviates so far from the source material, the movie just does not feel right. Sure, the movie may have had some of the main elements of the Gem theme song, like glamour and glitter, fashion and fame, but what it really needed was to be outrageous. Truly, truly outrageous. And if that isn't any indication on how lackluster the movie was, Universal actually pulled the movie from all theaters only 2 weeks after its nationwide release, due to how poorly it was doing at the box office. Wow, that kinda says it all. And the actors actually did a good job acting, and the original songs were original. It's just everything else. So, there it is, my number one, Gem and the Holograms. So what do you think? Agree? Disagree? Are there any live-action movies based off 80s cartoons that I missed? Let me know. Did you like any of the movies I discussed? Also let me know. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video. So tell me, is Gem in the movie truly outrageous?
No, she's not truly outrageous.